Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar. This webinar is focused on infrastructure as code for Azure using Pulumi and C#. This webinar is particularly focused on .NET developers. We tried a bunch of this infrastructure as code platform like Ansible or Forum and so forth, but we decided to highlight Pulumi on this webinar as it supports multiple languages and it is friendly towards .NET users. So without further ado, let me introduce to Eric Popivkar, who is going to lead us with this webinar. My name is Niraj Shah. I'm the CEO of Entech Solutions, and Eric is our CTO, who's going to lead this webinar. This webinar is going to be a little hands-on so that you'll see some code written on live. So if you're trying to follow and if you have a code editor, you can follow with Eric. So Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Niraj. So my name is Eric Popivkar. DevOps and infrastructure as code movement has come also to Microsoft land. And in this webinar, we are going to be setting up a simple infrastructure on Azure using Pulumi and C#. Pulumi is a tool that allows for infrastructure as code. And unlike many other tools, it supports writing, deploying and provisioning Azure resources using C#, which is very, 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 very friendly for .NET developers. So without further ado, let's begin. I'm also going to be, after this webinar, I'll share all the notes and all the steps that I've performed, so you guys don't need to take notes. And if you have any questions, we're going to have after I finish my presentation, we'll have a short session of Q&A. Also, if you have a question during my presentation, you can just raise your hand, and Niraj will announce it, and you guys can ask your question. So the first, setting up infrastructure on Azure using Pulumi involves several steps. It involves setting up an Azure account. If you don't have one, most of us probably do. It involves signing up with Pulumi website, installing Pulumi CLI and Azure CLI, which is the command line interfaces for both of them. And after that, we create a new project with the Pulumi dependencies and using a template provided by Pulumi, which works out of the box. And we're going to use that template and deploy to our Azure account. So you guys are going to see live how to set everything up and how to do a simple deployment. In the future webinars, we're going to go into a lot more detail about setting up more advanced infrastructure, setting up different environments like QA, staging, production. But in this webinar, it's just a little taste of things to come. So let's start. The first thing that you will need to be able to do infrastructure as code on Azure is you need an Azure account. It's a nice offer for trying out Azure. And if you sign up, usually we have it through work, but if you sign up for a personal account, you can get $200 credit, and then, as you can see here, and then you can also get a whole bunch of popular services for free for the next 12 months. So it's pretty decent offer. It's free. If you haven't used it yet, it's a really good way to try out Azure and just play around with various resources and see what you can do. So we're not going to spend time on this. You can, at your own time if you want to. So after you set up the Azure account, the next step is signing up on the Pulumi. So to sign up on Pulumi is pretty straightforward. You go to pulumi.com. You're going to have a sign-in option. I already am signed in, so I'm going to sign out to show you what it looks like. You sign in, you click on don't have an account, create an account, and you can just connect GitLab or GitHub or Atlassian, or just use your email and password and create a new account. Pretty straightforward. After you have an account, which I do, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. And we sign in, and if you guys create an account, you get this screen. So it's pretty straightforward. You get your dashboard, you get your projects, which we have none at this point, and you get your settings. In the settings, the important screen is access tokens. These are the access tokens that are going to get created for you when you need to do the deployment. You can create an access token and use it for CI/CD pipelines, or you can just I'll show you. You can just create it implicitly when you are connecting your local environment to Pulumi. So at this point, we have Azure and Pulumi logins. So what do we do next? The next step is to install Pulumi CLI locally. What is CLI? Command line interface. It will allow us to call Pulumi commands like Pulumi app, Pulumi preview, and things like that to be able to deploy resources from the Visual Studio C# project into Azure. The link to download the Pulumi CLI is here. So I need the latest version because I have a little bit older version and it keeps asking me to update it. So it's going to take a couple of seconds. 9, 8. You'll be able to run the following commands. So you can just open your command prompt. You don't have to be administrator, but it helps in some cases. So the first command is just to see if Pulumi got properly installed. You can do Pulumi version. So this will tell you what the current version of Pulumi is, and you know that it works, so it was installed. The other command is Pulumi login. So to be able to connect to Pulumi and Azure, you need to connect your local environment to both of these environments. And to connect to Pulumi from a local machine, you call Pulumi login. This is going to give you a little description. It's going to say, enter your access token from the portal or hit enter to log in using your browser. So if I go to this is a link that we went to before. I can just create a token and copy it directly into my instead of logging in. But instead, I would like to be wild and use hit enter to log in using browser. So when I do that, all it's going to do is just go to the current version of my default browser, check if I'm already logged in. If not, ask me to log in and automatically generate the token. So I'm going to click enter. It's opening. You are logged in. You may close this window. Okay, I'm going to close it. Now, if I refresh this page, you can see that there's a new Pulumi login that was just created. 46. Well, one of these few seconds ago, probably this one. I guess they're not sorted in the appropriate order. So this token just got created and assigned to my connection to Pulumi. So now, if I want to be able to see, if you're not sure if you're logged in or not, or you want to see who is currently logged in, let's say you have multiple Pulumi accounts, you can just do Pulumi, who am I? And it will basically tell you your name. So if you have another account, it will tell you that account. The other commonly used command is called Pulumi logout. I'm not going to run it yet. But if you use that, obviously, you're just going to disconnect from Pulumi. So for security reasons, it's probably a good practice. So now we connected to Pulumi. Let's connect to Azure. To connect to Azure, you use what is called Azure CLI, which is Azure command line interface. I'm going to post a link to it. So it can be downloaded from here. I'm not going to bore you guys watching me download it. So I'm just going to show you this page. You just have to click on install on Windows. It's going to download. I don't remember what size it is, but a file you execute it locally, and then similar to Pulumi, you can check that you have it installed by doing something like this. So AZ is similar to Pulumi. It's like whenever you want to run any Azure command, you start it with AZ, and after that you specify what you want to do. So this just tells me that this is Azure CLI version 236. Not super exciting. The next step is actually very similar to Pulumi, is to connect Azure environment to a local machine. I need to do Azure login. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to open a web browser here. Since I already have several accounts, and if you haven't seen if you guys just joined, we went. I showed a little bit how to set up Azure account and where to go to create a new one. But most of you probably already have it. So you just click here, and similar to Pulumi, it just says you have logged in into Microsoft Azure. So now I go back. It gives me some of this information. Please don't use it. It's very. Actually, this is an account I created for a demo, so you probably can use it, but without passwords and things like that, you won't be able to access it too much. So this is how you connect your local machine to Azure environment. So now we are connected to both Pulumi and Azure. Azure has also, if you're interested in some other Azure commands, there is Azure command called Azure Account List, which shows you all the subscriptions that your account might have. Like in case your account has multiple subscriptions or your login has a lot of subscriptions. So I have a whole bunch, so it shows a bunch. And then the important fields in it is default. So you want to make sure that the subscription that you want to deploy your Pulumi to is the default one. Otherwise, it might deploy accidentally to your company's production environment, and they may not be too happy. So the other command that's also pretty similar to Pulumi is AZ logout, and this one is used to disconnect from Azure. So for now, I'm not going to do it. So we're actually pretty far along. We have connected to both Pulumi and Azure, and now is we're gonna write some C#. So to write C# using .NET, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use command line a little bit. If you guys have been developing for a while, you might have used it in the past, but it's just an old way to switch directories, create folders, and so on. So I'm not trying to show off, but just since we have a command window open, we'll use that. So I'm going to go to the directory which I use to try out various software. So this is my directory. In this directory, I'm going to create a folder where I'm going to create a Pulumi project. So I'm going to call it Pulumi Azure Demo. Very creative. Now if I go there, and then I have a lot of stuff in here. But if I start typing Pulumi and I click on tab, Windows will help me. So now I go to this folder, there's nothing there. So now we're gonna use some Pulumi magic to create a new Visual Studio project with all the Pulumi dependencies already included, and a bunch of template generated classes which we can use out of the box to deploy to Azure. So let's go ahead and do that. There is another Pulumi command for that, and that command is Pulumi new Azure C#. This basically tells Pulumi to create a new Visual Studio project with using Azure C# template. So let's do that. So a part of the template is filling out a bunch of fields that need to be filled out. In this case, project name, I'm going to keep it the same as default, Pulumi Azure Demo. Project description, a minimal Azure native C# Pulumi program. I'll also keep it default. No reason to mess with it. The next part is a little bit more Pulumi centric. So you need to create a stack. Stacks are like you're gonna. So I'm gonna talk in detail about Pulumi, the way Pulumi organizes projects and environments in the future. But for now, by default, they let you create a dev environment, and you can also change it to QA, staging, or whatever else you want. But by default, it's dev, so we can just keep it that way. So the next part is, which Azure location do we want to use by default? West US is default, but I kind of like East. So let's do East US. So after that, Pulumi is going to look for all the dependencies and install them. And now we have a C# project with all the Pulumi dependencies that we can actually right away roll to Azure. Let's see what's inside this folder. Let me just use Windows Explorer because this might be a little bit easier. All right, so this is the same thing, but in a Windows Explorer form. So I'm going to open this project, and we're going to see all these files in the Visual Studio Solution Explorer, which is right here. So what are these files that Pulumi was so nice to generate for us? There's another file that it usually generates, but in this case, it actually skipped it for some reason. But we're going to do it. So of course, they updated the template, and I have to update my notes also. In the past, they used to have two files, one for initialization, one for just an entry point, like program main, and then the other one was called MyStack. But looks like in the last day, they decided to update it, which is kind of nice. When you call this command, you just get the latest version of the template, which is very nice. Also, probably because I installed the latest version of Pulumi today. So this one file, as you can see, all it's doing is there's an entry point, and inside of it, it uses C# code, and it's creating first resource group with name resource group, then a storage account with name SA that's going to use SKU, this SKU, and this type of storage v2. There's anything else interesting here? And that's pretty much it. After that, if you would like to create any other elements or resources, or the whole IntelliSense is available, you can use the Pulumi documentation. But for now, we can just go ahead and create these two resources just to make sure that Pulumi does what it says. To do that, I'm going to close these, and I'll show you how to open a new one. So you can just go to View, Terminal, and in here you just go into kind of a command window, but directly in Visual Studio and directly in the folder where the project is. So it's very convenient. I'm just going to check that all the files are here, and then I'm going to run a Pulumi command to see if I run it, what is going to get deployed to Azure. So if I do Pulumi preview, what it does now is it creates, if you guys ever use Entity Framework or like a database, like SQL database project in Visual Studio, it's kind of similar. It creates like a schema or infrastructure in memory, and then it compares it to what exists in Azure. So actually, not what exists in Azure, but what exists in the Pulumi stack that has been already created. In this case, this resource might actually exist in Azure, but Pulumi doesn't know about it. So we'll try to create it. What it's saying here in the preview is that if I try to deploy this, it's going to create a new dev environment on Pulumi. Then it's going to create a new resource group on Azure, and it's going to create a new storage account in Azure. So why don't we go ahead and do just that? Before running it, I just want to show you that we're going to go to Azure Portal. And I'm going to show you that if I go to this account that I just signed into, that there's currently nothing there. So you kind of like a magician thing. So just to show you guys that I haven't pre-created all these resources before running this deploy. So this is the account. If I go to all resources, there's nothing here. If I go to Pulumi website, if you look here, it actually created the project. When we created our project, it created a project also in the Pulumi on the Pulumi portal, and it knows that there is a dev stack that exists. What it doesn't know is what resources will exist in it, because we haven't pushed them yet. But as soon as we push them, then Pulumi is going to know the whole structure of what we are pushing out to Azure. So let's go back and use a command that's used to deploy these resources to Azure. And the command is Pulumi up. So now it's just analyzing. It's comparing what we have in our code to what is currently in the Pulumi. So there's nothing in Pulumi. We're gonna create everything. There is an option to do details, and details just give you like a detailed view of all the options in more of a in kind of a different format, so you can see exactly what's going to get rolled to Pulumi. Sometimes a lot of this data is not specified here, but is either calculated or comes from configuration files. So it's very nice to be able to preview all the data that's going to get pushed out right before it gets deployed. So this looks good. Let's press yes and see what happens. One interesting thing is, like, as you're pressing deployment, if you want all your friends and family to watch it live, you can just go to the link that Pulumi gives you over here, and it takes you here. And it shows you like what happens. Of course, in this case, there was a network connection issue, probably something with my ISP. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rerun it. I'm not exactly sure. Sometimes there is like a weird connection issues, but it's probably something local to my machine. So I'm just going to run it again and do it again. And we'll keep doing it until it works. So now something is happening. So it shows you, again, if you want to share it, like if you're working with other developers and they want to see what is currently being deployed, you can just share this link, and they can watch it in real time as deployment is happening. What's happening now? Well, it was an appointment, so it says update number 2. It's kind of red, which looks like an error, but worry not, it has succeeded. So as you can see, resource group got created, storage got created. If I go to resources now it knows. So it knows that there is a resource group, and now there's a storage account. So now the Pulumi knows about all the resources that we just created in Azure. If I go now to Azure, you can see that there's now a storage account that starts with SA, and there's now a resource group that starts with resource group. The reason it has like a random suffix behind it is because Pulumi by default does that, because they try to make it possible for developers to roll the environment multiple times, multiple instances of the same environment, and each time they just add a new random suffix so that it doesn't conflict with other environments. There is an easy way to get around this. If you want the name to stick and not to add anything, you can just, instead of storage in storage account args, you can just specify the property account name, and you can do it equals to SA. And if I deploy again, then the account name is going to be not SA blah blah blah, but just SA. So so this is pretty much all the steps that you need to get Pulumi and Azure connected on your machine, set up a simple project, and deploy it to Azure. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions or insights?
We have questions here from one question here. Can we create Pulumi project out of pre-existing Azure or AWS resources?
Yes, you can. There is a Pulumi command that allows you. I don't remember exact sentence, but it's something like this. So when you call this command, what it does is it takes Azure resource, it creates the code for it that you just copy and paste in your Pulumi project, and it automatically adds that resource to Pulumi. So if you already have infrastructure predefined, you just need to call Pulumi import a bunch of times, for different Azure resources. And after that, it will automatically generate code for you that you just copy into your config, into your program CS or whatever class you use to deploy it.
Another question is, what is the difference between Pulumi and just managing your resources via like a old school command line scripting language? What does it provide that the old command line scripting doesn't provide?
Well, the standard Azure approach to infrastructure as code is using what's called ARM templates. Now, ARM templates use JSON files, or there is this new approach called Bicep, which is similar to ARM templates, but they use a little bit more like a programming language. The problem with those compared to Pulumi is you need to learn a new language. You need to learn how it works. You need to become familiar with all the intricacies of it. And by the time you become proficient in it, it can take quite a bit of time. With Pulumi, it's much easier because all you do is just write C# code. You can use your regular Visual Studio. You can use your C#. You can use your IntelliSense. You can build. You can run a couple of commands in the PowerShell. It's everything. The learning curve is much, much, much less. So this is the main advantage of using Pulumi. Also, Pulumi, unlike scripts, Pulumi keeps a state of the current Azure setup. It keeps it in the Pulumi portal. So you don't need to actually you don't need to check if the resource exists. You don't need to write code or scripts that says, if this resource already exists, don't create it. If this resource exists, only do this, and things like that. Pulumi takes care of all of that for you because they have the current state of Azure in the portal. So when they compare what C# code creates to their state, they know exactly what the differences are. And then they only get to execute the differences on Azure.
Got it. So it allows you to basically write complex logic, if then else statement, so that you can check what exists and what you need to create new. And you can do looping and stuff like that, right? So if you need to create like thousands of machines in a short period of time, you can just implement that in a code. Plus, you can add all of your regular automated testing, unit testing, and so forth directly in your C#. Mm-hmm. So we have another question here. What exactly is stack? Do we create a new stack pre-environment? Go ahead, Eric.
So I'm gonna, it's a good question. So the way that Pulumi recommends to do it, and it's pretty good way in general. So they divide things into projects, and every project has a bunch of stacks in it. So the easy way to do it is if your company has multiple projects that need to be deployed to different environments, and for each project you have a different infrastructure. For example, you can create one Pulumi project that's associated with one of your projects, and for each one of them you create a stack for each environment: dev, QA, staging, prod. Then, using the regular object-oriented coding and using just standard coding practices, you can reuse the code. So if you are creating the storage account in all three environments, you can just write the same code and pass a parameter, like a different resource group or different subscription, and the rest of the code can be reused. It's unlike most of the other systems, like using JSON, YAML, or Bicep, or whatever. Here we can just use the regular object-oriented programming to use the same functionality on all the environments. Because in reality, most of the environments are going to be very similar. They might have a little bit different names. They might have a little bit different tiers. that they use, but overall the code is going to be the same. So we just create a class, put most of the common logic in it, and just override it per environment as needed. And this is something we're going to talk about also in one of the future webinars.
I have another question. So once the environment or your project is created, you just have a simple command to delete all of them, right? So the use case is basically, developer needs like the entire kind of mimic the production stack for one or other reason. You can just create it and just destroy it after, right?
Yeah. So this, like, Pulumi has a very simple way to destroy and create stack. So you just do Pulumi destroy, and it's just going to destroy all the elements, all the resources that were created as a part of the stack. It's very convenient, but probably a little bit dangerous. So I'm not going to do it at this time, but probably do it a little after the call. So next question, can we share other Azure resource between two different stacks? I want to put two environment stacks in one Azure virtual. Yes, you can. So what you would do is you would deploy a resource to one environment, or you would create it manually, and then you would use, again, I need to look up that command. You would use Pulumi import. The name of the ID of the Azure resource. And then you would just put this code that Pulumi will generate for you in both of the environments. You would need to actually run this command Pulumi import in both. So right now I can see what my current stack is. So it's dev and it has a little asterisk that is selected. I can easily, there's a command to switch stack, like Pulumi stack select. So if I have another environment, I can just change it. And then in that stack, I would call the import command again. So I would import the same resource in two environments. If you make an update in one environment, you might have some issues because the other environment is not going to automatically pick it up until the next deploy, but it's definitely possible.
All right, sounds good. I think that's all the questions you have. If you have any more questions, please feel free to look us up on Twitter, or you can just send an email to hello@ntechsolutions.com, and we're happy to help you. We will be doing some advanced level Pulumi and infrastructure as code in future, so we'll invite all the existing attendees for this webinar as well. So thanks everyone for your time, and looking forward to see you on our next webinars. Thank you so much and have a great day.